So our passage today comes from Matthew 14, verses 13 through 14. So you can pull that up in a Bible. If you have an app on a phone, tablet, or whatever that works too, it'll also be on screen. But Matthew 14, verses 13 through 14. So only 2 verses here, but I think it becomes really important. Now, I'll give some context to what happens before this passage. But remember, we're going through this sermon series of Matthew about how we are to be more like the disciples of Jesus, so that we too can be good disciples, but then we can also make more disciples. It's kind of this cycle here, is that we want to raise up disciples who then want to raise up more disciples. We want to not be actually like the disciples in the Bible who just couldn't figure it out sometimes. Like, we want to learn from the examples of others to be the best disciples that we can be, to follow Jesus more closely and to live more like him. And so here we have Matthew 14, verses 13 through 14. So hear the word of the Lord. When Jesus heard what had happened, now we got to stop there real quick, because unless you have your Bible pulled up, you're like, okay, well, what had happened? It was the beheading of John the Baptist. So John the Baptist, preparing the way for Jesus, baptized Jesus, was a known person to proclaim the good news that Jesus was coming, that the Messiah was coming, that the time was near for this. Overall, a pretty good guy. Now, he didn't look the part. He was a ascetic. He wandered the desert, ate locusts, looked pretty raggedy. He wasn't clean cut, clean shaven. Probably looked worse than me. Probably had long hair. I mean, again, you're thinking about a guy who lived out in the wilderness. And so here's this John the Baptist who Jesus celebrated, and he's beheaded. Now we can go into the vendetta of this lady and why she had it out for John the Baptist and Herod and all this other stuff. We can go into those contexts, but not today. But when we get to this part of the passage, when Jesus heard what had happened, it's this terrible news that John the Baptist had been beheaded. So we'll start again. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So again, short passage this morning. Short passage this morning. Again, he withdrew by boat after he had learned about John the Baptist being beheaded, and he tried to find a quiet place. I've been blessed with the ability to fall asleep anywhere. Did anyone else get blessed with that ability? Yeah. So Mallory hates it. It won't be like we're in the middle of a conversation, but family will be in the middle of a conversation, and I've had given some input periodically, and then the next time she looks over to me thinking that I'm going to contribute, and I'm just out cold. I went to a wedding with family before actually Mal and I were married. It was her family's wedding down, Kansas, I think it was. And there was this wooden bench at her aunt's house with the hard wooden armrest. Yep, that was a perfect pillow. Again, 30 seconds, I'm putting my head on that and I'm out. I have the gift of falling asleep whenever, however, and however quickly. Levi's been blessed with that as well. We hop in the car and 10 seconds down the road, he's mid-conversation sometimes, and all of a sudden he just stops, look in the little mirror that gives you the view and back for kids, and he's just out cold. It's great many times. It also ruins bedtime at sometimes too. But not everyone's blessed with that gift. One of the other things is, we talk about with children, that they need a sleep routine. Especially kids who don't go to sleep as fast as others. They need a sleep routine. Sometimes that routine can start as early as like an hour beforehand. Some need, maybe they go take a bath and then they read a book and then they do something else that calms them because they need a snack or whatever. Like, I've never experienced the dehydrating effect that bedtime is for children when they demand that they're so thirsty. Oh, I need a drink. No, you don't. You just had a drink. Oh, but I got to do that. No, you don't. Oh, I didn't go to the bathroom. Yes, you did. Like, come on, just go to sleep. They try to put it off. Again, sleep patterns vary for a lot of people. Again, you might be mad at me for saying I can sleep anywhere, at any time, in any place, where you may struggle to fall asleep. Maybe life's distractions have hit you. Maybe your mind just likes to race. Maybe you get concerned and weighed down, and when one thing happens, maybe you're almost asleep, and then again, something happens, you hear a bump in the night, thunder, lightning, whatever. We had a crack of thunder, 3 nights ago here? The house shook. It wasn't like a typical just boom of thunder. Like, it cracked. Mallory had been asleep probably for 20 minutes, and then she was up. I found amusement in it because she couldn't fall back asleep. Again, the tale of two people. I can sleep anywhere. She can't. It's hard. But one of the big things that when we think about sleep, we think about rest. Think about this thing of rest. So here we have Jesus who heard terrible news, and he went to go find a solitary place. He went to go find a place to rest. Again, let's go back to this sleep routine. How many of you have a good, I need to get calm, I need to rest, I need to just chill out routine? A few of you, okay. Routines help. Do you know the number one reason why people have a harder time going to sleep in today's culture is because of cell phones? Like, that your subconscious has been trained that this thing vibrates, as mine just did, ironically. But when this thing vibrates, even if you're asleep, your body will hear it. And you possibly will wake up. It's insane. Now, I say that as a person who also can be driven by this. This past week here at the church, we were talking to insurance companies. I went to bed one night, had just emailed this insurance guy. I went to bed at 9:30-ish. He texted back or emailed back at 11. I had woke up at 12:30 and responded to his email and then went back to sleep. Again, so the priority there was, I needed to respond. Was that really a priority, though, at that moment? That could have waited, right? But I guarantee that I'm not the only person who's ever done that either. We live in a world that's so connected that I got this message, I need to respond. Oh, this went off, or the phone, or whatever it is. What's part of your nighttime routine? I know people take baths, people read books, people, essential oils or whatever. Last night, I went up to go to bed, and I realized that I had taken my regular phone charger and brought it into the camper. So I got all the way into bed, realized my phone's going to die, and I went all the way back downstairs to go find a charger. Because it's important, right? I needed it. Did I really need it? No, but I did, right? It shows of kind of what was important at the time. Now, phones are actually a pretty good example of this, because I did bring my phone charger, and actually, it's not my phone charger. This is my computer charger. I like it a lot. You know why? Can someone give me a guess? Why do you think I like my computer charger to charge my phone? Someone said long cord. No. Fast and quick. Yes. This thing will charge my phone in 45 minutes. I love it. Especially when my phone dies probably at least once a day, if not getting close to 2 or plus, depending on what's going on. But I love this charger. So when Mallory needs it for her computer, or I need it for my computer because that's what it's for, or if one of the kids use it for one of their tablets because it's also that kind of plug-in, and I need it for my phone, got a little power struggle that goes on. Power struggle. See, I'd be lying to you if I told you that was actually a real joke. That was not. That was an accident. Again, I like this charger. You got an extra one? What charges you, though? Because we're just like our phones that need juice, that needs to be charged to function. What charges you? Sleep. What? Rest. Yep, rest can show up in many different ways. I had a friend who could only sleep 2 hours a night. But she could let her body rest the rest of the night, and she would be good. No one else? Who reads a book for rest? Okay, thank you. Me, it can be fishing. It could be just going out with friends, nature, exercise, music. Softball, that's restful. Or does it get you tired so that you can sleep at night? That's what it is. But it could be anything you enjoy, right? Rest. Jesus, when he heard about John the Baptist, he went to go find a quiet place. At this time, crowds had been following him. He had been healing. He had been showing compassion. He had been doing miracles, and people were following. These crowds were large. The whole towns were going to see, who's this Jesus guy? So again, when he had heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. So you got to think about this too. He withdrew by boat, and other people are following on foot. So there's going to be a little bit of a difference in the timing. Like they're not reaching the other side of the water at the same time as Jesus. But back then, there were specific ports, so they know where he's going. They find him, they show up, and that's the end of the quiet place. But he had a little bit of time. He had a little bit of time. Our English translation doesn't really reflect that super well, but there's a little bit of time difference in here with the way the Greek is written. He lands, he gets a little bit of time, and then people show up. I don't know about you, but when I finally do find a quiet time, I can get frustrated if it gets broken. When I finally find a place to rest, because if you know me, I'd like to go 100 miles an hour. I like to speak 100 miles an hour. I like to be busy. I like to do things, like doing things is where I find rest. My brother has asked me, like, hey, let's go down south. Let's go to Mexico. Let's go sit on a beach for vacation. That's not my type of vacation. It might be yours. Different personality. I understand that. Mine would be like, well, let's go look at historical sites. Let's go on a trip. Let's go on a tour. Let's go do something, because that's how I find rest. But my body can be tired. So for me, when I do find a place where I'm able to just relax and rest and find quiet time, I can get kind of frustrated when it gets broken. I know I'm not the only one. I've told too many stories about my own family already, so I can't keep going with that. But I know that when our rest gets broken, we can get a little cranky. Here Jesus is. He goes to find a quiet place, and people show up. Not just people, a crowd. The crowd followed him, and Jesus' response is not in frustration, it's in compassion. He has compassion on them and healed their sick. This compassion word in the Greek, I'm going to just butcher it completely. Sounds more like you're getting ready to spit. It's splaggnizomai. Now, more of a fluid one word, but you got to sound it out when it's that long and that's hard to say. Splaggnizomai. And this kind of compassion, though, isn't just, oh, you felt sorry for somebody. It's not you are watching the Animal Rescue League commercials on TV where they got the sad music and they make you tear up. And you're like, oh, that's so sad. And then it goes to the next commercial and you're like, oh, but I want that toy. Or whatever it's transitioned to. It's not something that's fleeting. This is something that aches your heart and makes you want to do something about it. This kind of compassion is like a knot in your gut saying there has to be a way that God is working through this. It's the kind of compassion that drives us to move. It's kind of compassion that we have for our children or nieces, nephews, or whoever in your life that can tug. When you say your heartstrings, like that's what that compassion is. It's what's hurting your heart so much that you want to do something about it. That's the kind of compassion Jesus is showing here. Again, remember, he is tired. He wants to find a place of solitude with his friends, with his disciples. He wants to go find a place to rest. But this is big news. Someone Jesus loved dearly beheaded. This tragic news. And think about this, if you're one of the disciples and John the Baptist was beheaded, what does that mean for Jesus and you? The implications of what happened to John is very well it might happen to you. So they're frustrated, their hearts are hurting, they're anxious, they're fearful, trying to find a quiet place, and yet the crowds don't leave them alone, and yet Jesus, when he sees them, has compassion on them. He has compassion on them. It's not this sense of duty. It's not this sense of let me just push through. I've had that feeling before. I remember back in college, I woke up one morning feeling pretty down, pretty sick, and it was no, I have to go to class. Because if I didn't go to class, I knew I'd skip work, and so if I had to go to class and I had to go to work, I remember getting back to our dorm that night, falling asleep, and I slept for the next 16 hours. Now, for some, that's not a lot. You probably have other better stories than what I do. But I slept for 16 hours. I had 13 missed phone calls from my mother, not knowing where I was. She finally called my roommate to check in on me. But I was sick. I was tired. But in that, I said, no, I have to do something. I still have to do this. Do you really have to? If it's hurting you in the long run, do you really have to do it? Are you letting the things of this world distract you enough that you're not ever finding a place of rest? And not finding rest, again, is hurting you on the inside. It might not just be physically, but spiritually as well. You're allowing frustrations or heartache, or you're allowing differences, arguments. You're allowing other people to get under your skin so that your heart is not in the right place. And you're not letting your heart rest. You're not letting compassion fill you because of people or problems or just life in general? Are you finding rest? When things don't seem to be going right, when things don't seem to be going the way you want, when things just seem hard, are you finding a place of rest? How do you plug in? How do you recharge? How do you get to the place where you're filled up again? Now, it can be a wide variety of things. I gave a few, like, I like nature, I like exercise, I like, fishing, hunting. I like doing those things. I like hanging out with friends. If you say that you like to watch football, again, your rest might dictate on winning and losing. Well, there's a funny meme going around, if you know what a meme is, picture on Facebook or social media that kind of makes parody jokes about things. But anyway, a meme. There's been a thing on Facebook recently that talks about saying, hey, I'm sorry for how my mood is going to be because it's going to be dictated based upon my favorite team's, outcome. Now, I'm a Chiefs fan, so usually most weeks I'm going to be a happy person. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, so that attitude has been pretty poor. Iowa State won, so everyone should be happy today, right? Right? What? I didn't watch that game. All that to be said, though, is like there's times that we let things dictate how we feel. We're not talking about physical rest. We're talking about a spiritual rest that sometimes it is physical. It weighs us down, makes us sick. But you need to find the ways that you connect back with God. Whatever that may be. Now, this is on top of what I hope that you are already doing. I hope that you're in prayer daily with God. I hope that you're reading your word daily with God. God has given us his word to let us know who he is. When times are tough, to remember the promises that he has given us. Go find a friend, pray with each other, lift each other up, hear their concerns, because God has given us a family to lift us up as well. So again, I hope those things, I hope that you're already doing. Again, go find God in nature and go on whatever, walk in a book, and your devotionals, great. It can't just be a Sunday morning thing. Find rest in God daily. Find that quiet spot. Find time to connect with him. Because as a Christian, if you're a Christian, those who are watching online, or you here in person, or maybe you're questioning or doubting or whatever that may be, because there's a next step to this. Jesus went and found a solitary place, and then when the crowd arrived, he had compassion on them. He had compassion on them. The next song we're about to sing is Here I Am, Lord. Here I am, Lord. It's all about service. It's about saying to God, hey, I'm here. Use me. We just had this sermon on rest, and now we're entering into service, but they go hand in hand because my phone does not function without a battery charge, and you don't function without being charged as well. And you are called to a ministry. So we sing, Here I Am, Lord, and we sing that even when we're tired. We sing, Here I am, Lord, even when we want alone time. We say, Here I am, Lord, even when I don't want to. We say, Here I am, Lord, even when my heart's not in it. Even when my heart is heavy. Here I am, Lord. Because in our weakness, he is strong. In our anxieties, he brings us peace. We find our rest in God. Truly, as a church, we've lived into, or tried to live into that with our name of Bethany as a refuge, a place of rest. We try not to avoid the messiness of the world. We try not to avoid the things that weigh down our hearts. We're not trying to be the perfect people that say, hey, we got it all figured out. Because that puts all the pressure on ourselves. And that's not restful. Here, Jesus heard bad news. Our world is full of bad news. Our world is full of hardship, hurt, pain. Our mourning here has been some of that. We bring it to God. We bring it to God to find the strength to keep moving forward, not because we have to, but because we get to. Not because we got to draw out the strength out of ourselves, but because God gives us that strength. So 3 things to remember here. That if you're tired, find a place of rest. Find a place to rest. Jesus took a boat to go find a quiet place. You got to go for a drive. You got to go hit a bike trail. You got to go hit a nature trail. You got to go drive somewhere else. You got vacation time. Go out of state. Go visit family or go visit friends you haven't talked to. Find something. When you need rest, it's okay to rest. That's number 1. You have to connect with God to find rest. That's number 2. Because if you try to find it on your own, your mind's going to keep going. Your anxieties are going to keep flaring up. The things of this world will continue to weigh you down unless you give them to God. Because our world is centered around, hey, do these 3 things and it'll fix what you're going through. Do these few other things and your anxieties will be free. The world is centered around, hey, if you have more money, then you can pay someone to do that so you don't have to. Like, our world is centered around, you do this to make your life better. Christianity is like, we come to God because He's done it all. And lastly, we come to find a place to rest, to recharge for the mission that God has put you on. To recharge so that we can function, to recharge so that we can be sent. To recharge to love. Let us pray.